The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards the
most radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on The Spin-off or wherever you get your podcasts.
Almonds. Of course.
We'll get to almonds.
Firstly, because the value that Jacinda Ardern gave for 2 litres of milk was exactly how much you would need to spend on almonds to make a 5% almond milk mixture. Second of all...
Perfect, yeah.
Remember we learned about the almonds in the Herald on Sunday, you know, when they had Clark Gayford and Mary English writing about, you know, why my partner should be PM.
We remember,
this
Ben,
is
because
your
you bring
favourite
this up
story.
almost every week.
I think about it all the time. But do you think that they'll do the same thing this year? Do you reckon they'll have Clark talking about how Jacinda gathers dandelions and thistles under a full moon to make tea for him and Neve? And then David Wongtung will just have a page that's crude drawings of Jacinda and hammer and sickle and signet. It's like...
No, my picky, my kaki, my hi there, my. This is Gone By Lunchtime. My name is Toby Manhire, and it's just after 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October 7. There are 10 days to go in the forever election. The only way to guarantee this election eventually comes to an end is to join Spin-off members, to change your electricity provider to Flick, and to subscribe to this podcast and say something nice about Annabelle Lee-Mather and Ben Thomas, who join me now. Hello, Annabelle.
Talofa and amen.
Hello, Ben. We'll get to that.
Hello, I'm amped because it's almost over.
Yes.
I'm like Donald Trump, facing the end of the life.
Right.
And newly energised, taking the podium, slightly short of breath, but still pumped.
But stifling the coughs to protect the country. We'll start with some questions, ladies and gentlemen, to check how in touch you are with the lives of ordinary New Zealanders. First off, how much is a 1.5 litre bottle of Mountain Dew, Ben?
From the dairy or the supermarket?
Supermarket, Countdown Supermarket.
No, see, I've never bought it from the supermarket. It's only been like a desperate kind of dairy dash sort of thing where it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, how much?
Not compared to nutritional foods.
How much?
I think the 440ml can is about $3.50.
Do you buy it by the can or by the litre?
By the can, easier to recycle.
1.5 litre bottle.
Plastics.
What do you
think? Such a green.
The answer is $2.60, ladies and gentlemen. Annabelle, how much is a VIP maxi combo at Zorb Rotorua, which includes 4 Zorb rides, a Zorb video, Zorb photos, and a Zorb t-shirt? That's the VIP maxi combo.
Oh, I'm going to say 350 tala.
350.
No, it's free for returning New Zealanders as long as they intend to stay for 3 months or more. Otherwise, $3,500.
The answer is $160, listeners.
I think that was right. I think once you do the currency thing, I'm actually right on the money.
Don't disrespect Samoa.
Sorry.
Its currency is surging right now.
Today we're going to talk about the third of 4 leaders' debates which happened last night in Christchurch, hosted by the Press newspaper and stuff.co.nz. We're going to talk about national MPs leaking again, about Judith Collins in the pews, the early turnout in the Māori seats, maybe even a little bit about the minor party debate, which you and I went to last week, Ben. Annabelle didn't show up.
No.
Don't know what.
Was it coronavirus?
I think it must have been a little cheeky little spot of COVID.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
The debate. Judith Collins was broadly thought to have won the first 2 debates, if not by a great distance, bringing the energy. This time, my perception, Ben, was that she perhaps lost the ability to modulate the moments, the timings, the combativeness flipped over into negativity at a few crucial moments.
The whole thing seemed to play out a bit like a pantomime of the first two debates. Jacinda Ardern doing this very sort of self-conscious, now we'll have a unifying moment, kind of hamming it up for the camera, breaking the fourth wall. Now I'm going to do my great healing routine. And Jacinda and Judith Collins, I think tipped over a bit too much into kind of hectoring and aggression rather than that kind of controlled performance we saw. It was interesting when I took notes. Here's an audio illustration for people at home. And when I looked back over my my notes to do a write-up, I sort of thought, well, Collins actually seemed to have the most moments, in as much as you could say anyone did. She seemed to have, make more sort of substantive points again, on a low base. But I sort of thought, but Ardern won the debate. That was the overwhelming impression that I got from it afterwards. And I think, Collins's tone seemed a bit nervy, sort of like she was really kind of trying to force the action. And it's hard to divorce that from the current context where National, we assume, is still well behind in the polls. 270,000 votes had already been cast by the end of Monday. And the idea that there was a bit of a sort of running out the clock. It was kind of like one of those rugby end of the rugby extra time where they're throwing the ball.
Come off a bit of a difficult day where there was quite a lot of firefighting happening with Leekstrom within her caucus, which we'll get to in a bit. Annabelle, was your read on the debate in that same territory?
Well, mine's slightly different just because I don't agree that Judith won the News Hub debate. I thought Jacinda put in a stronger performance, and I think what Jacinda did well there, she did even better last night. And what Judith did poorly in that debate, which, like you say, was the hectoring, not reading the room well, a perceived sort of lack of discipline and prepared to say anything in the heat of the moment, was even more accentuated last night.
Somebody else made the observation, which I think is an interesting one, that Judith Collins seemed to at times be debating the room and the moderators as well as Jacinda Ardern. And that's in part because she was heckled. But Jacinda Ardern was more adept at doing the debate for television, which of course is the real play. One of the things I thought was
JFK
interesting.
Nixon all over again.
Yes, it was very much like Nixon. One of the things that I thought was interesting was that because it's it's not the flashy TV stations putting it on. It's a website, and they've got a lot of excellent people there now. So it's by no means is it a sellotape production, but there were no cameras back on the crowd. So when Judith Collins was engaging with the crowd seemingly or kind of throwing lines out there was no cutaway to the crowd, which is a big crowd in the theatre in the town hall in Christchurch.
750 people,
750
apparently.
people, very, very, very much alert level 1, good times. So you kind of felt a bit like, what's she doing? What's going on? And I thought that was probably to her detriment on the TV.
Yeah, if you're talking to somebody that the viewer at home can't see, you just start to seem a bit insane and paranoid. It's certainly distracting. The difference that's emerged from the past two debates, I think the News Hub one was a draw, where they were both really on top of their games. But the difference in tenor that's emerged between the two is that Ardern is looking like a Prime Minister in the last two debates. Collins is very much looking like the scrappy challenger, to good effect in the News Hub debate and probably to her detriment last night.
It's a risky strategy that you play close to the wire, and I think it's inevitable that sometimes you cross that wire.
Yeah, I think, Judith is great at being assertive, but her problem last night was that she wasn't choosing her battles wisely, and so her response to Jacinda and border control with the don't disrespect Samoa thing, I think just makes her come across as maniacal.
Yeah, I thought she actually did well on the border response stuff. She got, I think, her biggest pop of the night when she talked about the failures at the border and about letting people come onto planes with COVID-19 early in the piece. And that got a surprisingly strong reaction, which sort of suggests, I mean, first of all, you've got to remember it's a Canterbury crowd, and they're very parochial, and they're probably a bit more conservative, if not centre-right leaning, but more conservative in a New Zealand sense than a lot of other audiences, particularly Auckland audiences for the debates. And there was that sort of sense of Fortress New Zealand that that Judith, played on. I thought, and Ardern sort of responded with, well, your response is to put Jerry Brownlee in charge of the border, which you would have expected would get a good response in Christchurch, but actually fell a little bit flat.
Did it? Jerry Brownlee was very much the third person on the stage who was referenced very times, and at one point I thought he when they were doing their how much is a pint of milk questions, there was a question, how much does the press newspaper cost, and he hollered from the crowd, too much.
A lot of the arguments that Judith put up last night about the border, though, were completely eviscerated this morning by Susie Ferguson on Morning Report. I don't know if Susie had her Weet-Bix this morning and was powered up, or didn't have her Weet-Bix, so was like hungry and super tenacious, but it was a really interesting listen, and one of the points she made is that actually National only called for the borders to be closed 2 hours before Cabinet met that day before deciding to close them. So it's an interesting listen. Susie in her element.
Yeah, I think some of the criticisms about the whole Samoa went faster and sooner. A lot of it hinges on semantics, just like there's no one lockdown, around the world. There's no one border closure. Everyone's got different sort of parameters. A week before we went into level 4 lockdown, I met one of my friends from overseas at the airport who had returned. And at that point, there was sort of, quote unquote mandatory self-isolation, but there was no enforcement of that.
Sure.
She had been travelling on a plane with British backpackers who said, we're going to isolate in a combi van while we travel around the country. So it's not...
Look, I think that it's absolutely true to say that the we went hard and early, or harder and early than anyone else is not correct. Like, we could have gone earlier and harder on some things. That's absolutely true. But it's also true that to say Samoa went a month earlier is just, it doesn't really stack up. And so I think that while the critique is a good one, the Samoa example possibly is falling short.
So disrespectful, Toby.
I'm sorry to disrespect
Samoa.
Samoa.
I can't bear this fucking disrespect.
Annabelle stormed out on behalf of Samoa. The day, of course, for the National Party, possibly one of the reasons that...
Oh, sorry, can we just go
Collins,
back can we just do two things about
hang on. Just everyone, Ben's got notes, and
Pai
he's
hoa,
going to get
pai
through
hoa
those notes
pai
from
hoa.
hell or high
going- yeah,
water.
No,
He's got a whole lot of material here.
This is
Beautifully
something
bullet pointed.
Well, just let us know when we'll just wait.
You're just thumbing through the... Yeah.
Okay.
I've got it indexed. One thing that I thought didn't get picked up was when they were talking about mental health, Judith Collins was singing the praises of Matt Ducey, who's the very good national spokesperson on mental health. And she said he's a mental health professional. And she said Matt Ducey has had quite a lot to do in Parliament as well, actually. And I was just, what is this? Was he like, was Todd Muller stretching out on one of the Parliament sofas and having a chat with Matt Ducey? It seemed like a very strange thing to say.
I have no idea why that's funny. Sorry, keep going.
Do they have, is he their EPA or EAP program at National? Everyone gets 3 free sessions with Matt Ducey when they're under strain. Yeah,
Have you got more notes?
I had some stuff about the quickfire round. Did we?
Well, I feel like we covered that off. I mean, you've actually got tables on your
tables,
notes.
Yeah,
it's this is data visualization on a podcast. I think this is another first.
I'm a political
from
scientist.
Gone By Lunchtime. Very quickly, Ben.
These quickfire rounds are sort of as Neil Jones, the former Labour Chief of Staff, pointed out, they're an exercise in memorisation and an exercise in commodity selection by staff members.
Yeah, they got flashcards, basically, right?
Yeah, they get flashcards. So they both knew that Netflix was $11.99. They both got different prices for milk because they probably memorised different varieties. Neither of them knew about lamb because lamb had been out of the notice of the staffers. And plus we learned last week that they're basically
twice
vegan.
a week.
Yeah, what about fish? What about a leg of fish? What about a leg of fish?
Kia ora, I'm Sophie.
And I'm Simon.
And I'm Alice, and together we host the Spin-Off's food podcast, Dietary Requirements.
Join us each month as we explore a vast culinary landscape, from the gourmet
Ooh la la
to your more hearty taka.
Kiwi onion dip, anyone?
Everything's on the table in Dietary Requirements.
Subscribe wherever you listen to all your other favourite podcasts.
And, you know, yeah, well, that was pretty much it. No one can see my tables. It's very sad.
It's powerful. Would you like to hum them?
Hum them?
Earlier in the day, National had faced a kind of return of the plague that had tormented them in earlier months in 2020, with MPs, at least 2, maybe 3, leaking to Newshub, to TVNZ, to Stuff and RNZ, or at least talking to them about the Judith Collins tendency to policy make during the campaign. The only question being whether it's on the hoof or on the fly. Seems to be some disagreement. I'm not quite sure on the classifying difference. But Denise Lee particularly had written an email to caucus and criticising Judith Collins, announcing during, I think it was the Mike Hosking breakfast show the other day, that there would be an inquiry into Auckland Council structures. And in that MP, Denise Lee, among other things, criticised a shockingly bad display of poor culture, which is quite tense. Quite tense to happen 11 days out from the election when voting is already open. A, for that to be the mood in caucus, and B, C, D, E and F, for that then to be leaked to the media.
Look, Denise Lee, like a lot of national electorate MPs, is not going to be having a great time right now. There's a big swing nationwide, obviously, towards Labour away from National. That means that seats like Maungakiekia, which Denise Lee possibly only won in the last election because Chloe Swarbrick split the vote with Priyanka Radhakrishna, the Labour candidate. You would say, even with boundary changes, pretty likely that Denise Lee will lose that seat, and then she's going to have a hard time getting back on the list with National's party vote right now. So you can understand why there's pressure on these individuals. Look, policy making on the hoof happens during campaigns. It just does, you know, whether it's happening in a debate or, you know, as with Judith Collins' proposal to legislatively claw back the wage subsidy.
That sort of thing doesn't happen. Look, there's captain's calls, but then there's...
whether it happens the next morning on the Mike Hosking breakfast show where Judith Collins says, we probably won't claw back legislatively the wage subsidy. That would probably be quite hard. So... And we had the same thing during the last campaign. Jacinda Ardern changed the position on, she made a captain's call on capital gains tax, she made a captain's call
She didn't make it during a debate, to be fair to her.
No,
She didn't just go, actually, you know what, I'm going to...
No, and I don't, my understanding is that Auckland Council policy wasn't made up during the
Okay, sure.
interview.
The wage subsidy one was, the Gloria Vale inquiry was, maybe
yeah.
the farming inquiry, you know, that's...
But you do get people making commitments during debates, and more importantly,
Yes.
during a campaign, you do have to be nimble. You do have to basically come up with policy without the normal processes.
In every interview, though.
You just got to keep it.
You got to keep momentum.
You got to keep it cooking.
Keep
What
it
do you
rolling.
want? Out doing a walkabout just on Ponsonby Road right now. What do you want? I want free ice creams. Free ice creams.
Yeah.
Done. Put it in the manifesto. It's like boo, boo.
Yeah, I want somewhere to like eat my ice cream in the shade underneath the Kate Shepherd statue. Double duty.
I'm going to make a statue of you, sweetheart. What's your name?
But I mean, the really disturbing thing for the Nats was the leak. Now, that's been portrayed as there's chaos in the National Party caucus, people are turning on Judith Collins. I'm actually not too sure about that. I mean, we can't, for instance, Tova O'Brien, who had the leaked email, didn't clarify, she said it was an MP. She didn't clarify whether it was an MP who was standing for re-election or whether it was an MP on their way out who maybe had a bit of beef with the party and Judith Collins and what's happened. Either we may never know who the leaker was. Either way, it was a pretty appalling disclosure.
Yeah. It's not the sign of a party that feels like it. Look, there was a sense that things were moving. Since that first debate, Judith Collins has had a skip in her step. She's been doing really well. And we were talking about that last week. There was definitely some sense of momentum. I don't know whether this is, it's overstating it to suggest that the bottom is about to fall out, but you feel as though I just don't really see now how you can sell that strong team, better economy, thingammy, dingamy, dang.
I think what it suggests is that after the election, that there will be a reckoning for Judith within the party, that it won't be a
biblical one?
Just that perhaps it won't be a foregone conclusion that she will remain leader, and it's likely that she will face a leadership challenge.
And I mean, look, there's two things to that. The first is that it really depends who's still there. Denise Lee is obviously a bit discontent, but she might not be in caucus. The likely leaker may not be in caucus. Paula Bennett, who got into a contretemps with my old colleague Matthew Houdin.
A good old-fashioned flame war on Twitter.
Wherein both said that wherein both, no longer associated really and actively in the National Party campaign, said that they would have or could have done better than each other. But the other thing is, look, Judith Collins will face a leadership challenge. I mean, as far as I understand, Christopher Luxon essentially believes that he will walk into the caucus room the first day that Parliament convenes and sort of be anointed.
Directly across the lagoon.
Carried on a litter.
On water.
And crowned king of the National Party. And some cynical people have suggested that because Luxon belongs to that kind of Christian conservative strain of National that's becoming stronger, that may have played a part in Judith Collins seeing the light in the last week.
Yeah, well, let's move on to that. I mean, I think we should just say that Christopher Luxon, well, the one time I've spoken to him, he was very clear that he didn't see it that way at all. And I guess we'll find out. There's certainly sometimes an appetite to anoint people well before they're even in Parliament. But yes, we've segued onto that question of the faith thing, the old my husband is Christian, so hallelujah. The photograph that was at the centre of this was Judith Collins going to St Thomas Church, I think, in Tamaki, ahead of voting on Sunday. A kind of incredible photo. It was one of those photos that will be defining in some sense of the campaign, in which she was standing alone, kneeling alone, I should say, hands clasped together, very much like a prayer emoji, a prayer.
11 days out, we're probably at about the fourth station of the election.
And she said that she was on the way in there, and someone at the church invited her to pray, and she did, and the media then came in, and she wasn't going to tell them to go in. That's fine, but it follows also her volunteering various examples about her Christian faith in both the first two debates, I think. And
I'm a Christian and a feminist, so go figure. I think that's what she said in the News Hub debate.
And she said in response to a question about
Nicky Hager burning forever.
There was Nicky Hager was going to meet his maker. There was also a line about Winston Peters, whether or not she would work with him, and she said she's a Christian. I believe in miracles, but even that miracle has come to stop. Anyway, there are various examples of it. It doesn't seem like something that could be put down to chance. I've read Judith Collins' book, and there is almost no mention of Christianity in there. It's not. There's a reference to Anglicanism, I think, once, and there's a bit there, and she points out that she talked about it in her maiden speech. But it's an interesting time, Annabelle, and there's been speculation. We can probably overthink it, but the speculation is whether this is an attempt to scoop up the vote on the right for this election, or whether it's about trying to placate and manage her caucus after the election.
I think it's definitely an attempt to scoop up more of that conservative vote that's being scattered across a range of minor parties. What I find really interesting about it is seeing the way Christians on Twitter have responded to it. So I've seen different ones talking about, we never knew this about Judith. We really want to hear her faith story. Is it in her book? And I think for perhaps for a certain sector of Christians, it will be super appealing. But I think that there will also be a number of really devout Christians who don't feel the same way. And who may see it as a somewhat hollow move. So it's kind of a high-risk strategy, really.
Yeah, I think so as well. The median voter in New Zealand has not tended to respond to outwards religiosity. Bill English was very devout. Simon Bridges is very devout. Todd Muller is a man of faith. But you never... Bill English, you were always aware of his Catholic background and didn't shy away from it, but you certainly never saw him praying.
It's a curious contrast with a number of other countries where not to have an overt faith would be seen as a problem. I remember when Ed Miliband became leader of the Labour Party in the UK, and he said he was an atheist, and there was a lot of people going, that was the first thing, because it's just not
done. It would be utterly disqualifying in the United States.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that it should be almost the other way around, that it should be seen as almost a risk factor too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of New Zealanders are looking what's happening in the States at the moment and how Christian fundamentalism and the state, mixing together there and the outcomes that it's having, and the rolling back of things like abortion laws and that sort of stuff. And I think that probably for a lot of younger or middle-aged voters, it will definitely be seen as a risk to mix religion with politics so overtly.
But this is the weird thing about it as well, is that she's an Anglican. I mean, you can't, the commonalities between Anglicanism and what we would call the conservative Christian right in politics, there's almost no overlap.
Closer to atheism.
And Judith Collins has certainly not been courting that advanced New Zealand or perhaps parts of the conservative, new conservative vote in any really aggressive way. Yesterday at the debate she said that she believed in fluoridation, for instance. I mean, that immediately rules out everyone who's voting with Advanced New Zealand, probably half of the new cons as well. She last week said that she wouldn't work with the Advanced New Zealand Party if they were somehow managed to make it into Parliament because she's not insane. And she hasn't resiled in any way on her socially liberal stances on abortion, on end-of-life choice,
Yep.
So it's just a puzzling kind of thing.
I sort of partly wonder whether the strategy at the moment is, I'll give it a try. Like, why not?
That seems to be the vibe, right? Because you can't mention Christianity that many times by mistake after not having really. I worked in the Beehive for 6 years in the Key government. Faith never featured as part of Collins's politics, and that's not to say that there's anything insincere about it. Just that. You have to make that decision to then bring it to the forefront.
To communicate that, yeah. Hey, the advance voting is underway. You mentioned it before, Ben. The first 3 days, those being Saturday, Sunday, Monday, saw 271,369 people vote, which is a lot. I think I saw someone suggesting that was coming up towards something like 12%. I don't know. You're the data visualization guy.
About 2.2 million votes last time.
So it's a lot. Well, so it's more like 9% then or something.
No, it's more than 10%.
12%. Yeah, like I was saying, 12%. That's from the lab. That's just the latest data from the lab.
If we could get a calculator. Tina, can we get a calculator?
But various people have been suggesting that the sort of big turnout so far is because people are thinking if we get all the votes done, then they'll just have to stop. That'll just be, we'll just call an end to it. No need to do the last debate. Everyone's already voted. What are you, Annabelle, thinking, casting forward to election night, is most in play as far as the Māori seats are concerned? Because there are pretty few seats this time around. Sometimes we've normally had a bit of Epsom, or we've had a little bit of Te Tai Tokerau that's been sort of felt like in play and could really shift the axis in terms of the balance of parties in Parliament. We've been looking this time at Auckland Central, which I don't know if we'll get to this time, but probably isn't in play. You never know. It might be. It's getting tighter. We've talked about Te Tai Haaru, and now there's a poll in Waiariki suggests that might be a bit more of a contest. You've completed 6 of 7 debates now. Mm-hmm. What is it? What are you most amped for?
I'm most amped for our debate this evening, which is Debbie Ngāriwapeka and Adrian Rudawhi. There was a poll that came out last week that showed Adrian comfortably ahead, but I still think that, polling Māori seats is not an exact science. So I definitely still think that seat is in play. We had Rawiri Waititi and Tamati Coffee's debate a couple of weeks ago. Rawiri, again, I've said before, is a very impressive candidate. He stood for Labour in Waiariki in 2014 and did a great job. The polls suggest that, the gap between them is
within
conquerable,
reach. Yeah.
I guess you could say. Any challenger basically is taking on Jacinda Mania, and Jacinda remains a really popular leader within Te Ao Māori, so that's difficult. What I've noticed throughout the debates, though, is that the Māori Party are, in most of the seats, not all, are fronting some really exciting, charismatic, well-connected community leaders who are, showing enthusiasm and energy and innovation that you can't when you're a sitting MP. And with our Labour MPs, I'm not sure if it's because it's been an incredibly long election campaign. They've had coronavirus and a number of, dramas, but they're coming across as experienced and understanding of how government works, but tired and not very exciting. Not invigorating, not inspiring people to get out and vote, which is different to what they were last time. I think last time they came across as a lot more exciting and inspirational. So,
as part of that safety first, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think possibly, last time
they're
around...
back on the list now.
They're back on the list. Last time around, they were campaigning with their pants on fire because they did all come off the list. But this time, I'm not sure if they've learnt some hard lessons from Kiwi Build about, don't overpromise and under-deliver. And this time, they've been told to take a more measured approach. But there is a lack of energy coming through in the debates, in my eyes.
I think maybe next week, which will be our last podcast before the election, should it ever finally arrive, we will maybe talk about a few other seats that we're interested in that we think we'll be watching on election night.
Can I just say we had the Te Tai Tonga debate last night, which was
how did that go, Annabelle?
Mildly traumatic, to be honest. It's the first time in my 20 years of creating content that I've had someone drop an F-bomb live on air, and that was probably the least of my problems. But Tākuta Ferris was a really confident, charismatic candidate. He's standing for the Māori Party. I don't know much about him. I don't know his background, but he put in a really, really impressive performance against my whanaunga Rino. So he's definitely one to keep an eye out for as well.
But
So
it's really
what
the Te Tai Te Kātane season.
Yeah,
That's right.
What are his
63
chances
years
of
they've held it.
success sort of measured by percentage of Te Kātane DNA that he holds?
That's a very good question. I would say not high, but in terms of enthusiasm, te reo, charismatic, mana, enhancing tanga that the Māori Party loves. He's got all of that stuff in spades.
Very quickly, Annabelle, if people missed the debate on the internet, which they're on Facebook Live, I think, and on the news website, is there any other way they can watch them?
Yep, they're on YouTube as well.
And on TV on the weekend?
And on TV, they replay it on Saturdays and Sundays. So on Saturdays will be the Te Tai Hauaru debate before the nation or after the nation. I should know this. And on Sunday, it'll be the Te Tai Tonga debate before the hui.
Okay, we've got to push on. Ben, before we go, you went to the minor party, or what was called the power broker debate. Annabelle wasn't you were, just double check, you were meant to be there?
I was meant to be there, but I was just tired.
You're tired.
I was a little bit
It's
tired.
been a long campaign. Ben,
Belly did a little moist.
there was. What did you make of it? Give us your quick wrap. Give us a data visualization.
Tamahiri made the most noise.
John Tamahiri, the co-leader of the Māori Party.
His interplay with Winston was, reasonably illuminating.
Do you think that they JT and Winston for Radio Live afternoons after 2000?
Yeah, the
20.
ZB Sports in the afternoon.
It was good to
weekend
watch.
Afternoons. Yeah, I don't know that it would have shifted any opinions. David Seymour obviously had the sort of centre-right ground to himself. Winston sort of receded into the background a little bit. Marama Davidson played it pretty safe as well. I mean, I don't know. I wonder just how much any of these debates are even sort of registering in our medium-term memory anymore.
One thing that I'm finding interesting is, like, in the past when we've had debates, usually the candidates come with some key figures from the party who are there to, like, groom them and support them. And there definitely hasn't been as much of that this time, and I suspect it's because there's actually so many debates and panels and liveys and, with social
podcasts,
media and podcasts and all the rest of it, it's really kind of fragmented the coverage. So I don't know if parties are feeling a bit spread thin, but definitely not the amount of reinforcement around candidates that there used to be.
I'd love to see a debate with all the leaders in it. We did one last time round, and maybe we'll do it again next time if you're still alive in 2023. But we had basically the deputy leaders. We did a debate, a spin-off debate, and we had representatives of all the parties. It was great fun.
You were great. You did that great opening. It was the one with Marama Fox when she gave the fingers.
Marama did the fingers. Gareth Morgan
debate.
said that all New Zealanders were idiots. It was good fun.
Shane Jones drifted off about 3 or 4
Shane
times.
Jones sort of fell asleep and then insulted everybody. It was good.
Auntie Paula was there.
Kelvin was there. Kelvin Davis was there.
there.
But it felt like you actually. I think it's. And this isn't the media aren't to blame for this. This is the restrictions that are placed on it by the party machines. But I think I would like to see all of those people on stage at the same time a bit and see some of the ways that they relate to each other. When you have that kind of power broker or minor thing, sometimes you miss out.
That's the other exciting thing that happened last week.
Oh.
The courts finally knocked back a minor party trying to butt into a TV debate. Dunn and MediaWorks is the 2005 decision where a High Court judge issued an interim injunction basically forcing MediaWorks, a privately owned media company, to build new podiums to let Peter Dunn and I think Jim Anderton into their crammed debate studio. It was a bad decision at the time. The courts have kind of clung to it because of the way precedent works in the High Court, but last week the court said, enough is enough. The criteria is clear enough. The new Advance New Zealand, who were the ones who were rejected, are so minor and so insignificant that they can't make the threshold. And so we are seeing a bit more of a clawback on that way of minor parties just basically bullying the media into covering them.
I think that's a great note to go out on. It's really good to hear Ben Thomas acknowledging the debt that New Zealand owes the whānau Palmer in the legal dynasty. I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you very much to Tina Tiller. Thanks, Tina.
God, we love you, Tina Tiller.
And, of course, also the bad boys of Brexit. Catch you next week.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I kōrero with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, Senior Writer at The Spin-Off. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.